to read this shit, and it's not going to be me, I guess.
I hope you guys read the notes because this is episode 46 of the Three Body Problem.
Not
Thank
47.
you to Juanito.
Almost
Thank you.
47.
45?
47 being the magic number.
Filling out episode 45 with your NCSC talk.
Thanks for putting that out. It's been sitting there for like a year, and it just never really made it out there. So I was actually really happy to see it kind of come out. So I
got some pretty good feedback. Finally, we got a 30-minute episode up, so that was pretty cool.
Everyone's happy.
People complained.
Great success.
People complained it was too short.
The reason I say that is because we were not here last week because you guys were at PivotCon. You were both at PivotCon. I missed you guys. It's very fantastic to hear your voices. Who's going to fill me in on what happened there? Who's going to be our lead?
Who's going to fill you in?
Who's going to be our lead PivotCon reporter? Anything we learned there? Anything big? Anything interesting happened there?
Let's do two versions. My version and Juan's version. My version was 23 pages of hashes, IOCs, which I didn't, of course, photograph. I had to write them down. Like,
what are you talking about?
I photographed all.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, like obviously this is it's a conference for hash aficionados like myself, and we exchange hashes. There's a lot of hash going on thingies, and
like trading Pokemon
you have to
cards.
write. Yeah, it's like Pokemon with hashes. Absolutely.
Juanito, how was the conference?
So the reason I was pushing to Kostin was that I missed about half of the fucking conference, which is fairly frustrating. But between
fairly normal too. Well, you're never going to catch the entire conference.
It's just more than intended, and frankly, this is a conference that you want to catch everything on, right? Like I missed some talks that I was genuinely really excited about, so I'm actually pretty upset on that front. But you know what? At this point, at this stage of my career, I'm grateful I got to see half of it. I was on phone calls till like 12:30 at night and like a bunch of other bullshit. So on the positive end. Second PivotCon, complete success as far as I'm concerned. Still got a solid vibe. Everybody was excited. The workshops, which are free and available to everybody in the very beginning if you show up early enough, not only were really cool, like Martin and Vitor Ventura did like an AI one, but there's also the Synapse, the Vertex Synapse one, due to some unfortunate travel incidents, was actually taught by Vizzy himself. So, like, there's things like that where you're like, oh, that's fucking cool, right? Like, you're never going to get that anywhere else. And then the talks that I did get to see were pretty phenomenal. What I'll say, Kostin, is what can we talk about?
Yeah. Wait a second. We went into PivotCon. We went into PivotCon pretty excited about a keynote. And it was a pretty heavy cryptocurrency themed agenda. Is that a fair assessment? I'm just looking at it from outside. I didn't go to the conference. It was very heavy.
Magic monies.
My impression was about the third of the conference were magic money talks, which again highlights how important this topic is.
Well, let me ask that. Does that mean that this is important? Like, I mean, Juanito, are the crypto people running? Wait, I know. Let me ask the question though. We have been skeptical. Juanito and I on this podcast have been skeptical calling this magic money. That's how this whole thing started. It seems like more and more security conversations are being driven by what's happening in the crypto world. Leave AI aside, it still is, because there's so much money and the theft leads to so. And we'll get into. I'm kind of teeing it up for the big story this week. But Kostin, are we being left behind on the security thing?
Okay, wait. So no, before Kostin can speak sense, I think this is more an indictment or like a cooling of the other parts of the security space more than it is a highlighting of the importance of the cryptocurrency space itself. And that's I wanted to throw that biased view in there because, dude, look at how many of the stories from this week are layoffs in the security space and like this sort of sense of, you know, the bubble unevenly deflating in some ways. But crypto is where the fucking money is, right? It doesn't get any clearer in value. It's the way we used to talk about like 2012 to 2015 financial sector and like attacks against banks, right? If somebody was going to buy your security product, it was the Saudis and the banks, right? Those are the people you could fucking count on. So that's my misperception. Kostin can give you a more informed view at this point.
Right, Kostin, you were telling us way ahead of time, like this crypto security connection story is a significant thing that we should all be paying attention to. Why? And why do you believe that 1/3 of an entire cybersecurity conference, focused on threat intelligence and focused on incident response, should address cryptocurrency related security things?
Well, on one hand, I think we're a bit lucky that one of the most prolific threat actors out there, DPRK, Lazarus Group, and their 1,500 subgroups are, let's say, very, very focused on this topic. And I think that they're probably the ones driving most of the activity in this field. And people like that. It's a group that anyone can talk about. Like, there's no restrictions. Companies from one side of the world can talk. Companies from the other side can also talk about that. I don't know about Chinese companies. I don't see them talking much, but I think pretty much everyone else can talk about Lazarus.
The calls coming from inside the house.
Then there's, of course, a few other actors, including like new ones and maybe kind of old ones, which simply moved here because this is where the money is, like Juan said. And it's simply nowadays, it's easier to steal this cryptocurrency stuff than stealing money from your bank accounts, which make it like the favorite target of these groups.
It's not even easier. It's just I'm tempted to say, and this is obviously wrong, but it's almost a victimless crime. It's one thing to have a crime with no punishment, which it is for the most part, right? Like, I mean, there's one story about like a guy getting picked up in Israel. It's like, okay, stick to certain countries, bro. Like, what are you doing? But when I say it's almost a victimless crime, it's obviously a lot of people for whom this is real money are getting scammed. It's happening in the States, it's happening in Europe. But like, there are also a bunch of crimes that we keep talking about where like $70 million disappeared overnight. Boom. Nobody felt it. Nobody touched it. No one complained. Nobody sued. So what's okay? Like, if you're just telling me that there's like a shit ton of monopoly money just sitting around, I can take it, and you don't even hear from like some grandmother somewhere who like lost her savings, then what the fuck's the problem, right? I'll fund my missiles this way. Like, if you could buy uranium online, I'd fucking do it too.
Look, that's an angle, and I think there's another angle here, which is kind of driving everything. That, and by the way, there was a talk about it. I don't know if we can mention it for sure. If you look at the agenda, which is public, you will spot which talk it is about. But the great thing here is that tracking cryptocurrency is much easier than tracking real world money. Like, anyone can do it. It's in the open. It's immutable. It's a high fidelity.
It's not anonymous.
It's not. It's like in the open. It's not anonymous. Most of these transactions.
It is anonymous, but it's transparent, right? Like,
true, like. True. But once you classify these wallets, then it's child's play.
Golden.
And the wonderful thing here, I think, is that it gives you a better insight into some of these groups are doing that you could probably get through conventional means. Like, suddenly, once you identify a group's wallet and wallets, then from the cryptocurrency side of the investigation, you can find a lot more about their partners, which tools are buying, where they're buying them, like how many licenses, what kind of specific, ransomware samples or stealer toolkits with how many activations they're buying. So it's wonderful from this point of view. It helps with all the other investigations, which was one of the subjects of a talk at PivotCon that I personally liked a lot from an unnamed guy at Google or Google /Mandiant.
There were a couple of really good talks on that front, and some really interesting. There's our friend Bartosz made a really interesting comment about again, I don't know what we're allowed to talk about. So, like, about the nature of
can we just move on to the next subject, because you guys are driving me insane with these baseball things.
The agenda is public. You can look at the agenda.
Well, honestly,
you can figure out
the agenda is public. Pasquale is listening to this for sure. It's like, it was a little vague as to what's like. We're trying. I don't know, man. Like, what was TLP Red? What was TLP Amber? What's just like, well, if you were there, like, what ends up being like fucking Chatham House? It wasn't too clear. But what I wanted to say, actually, on the cryptocurrency side, yeah, the threat space is great. The security burgeoning around this is great. And like Kosten said, right, you have this opportunity for this like chained analysis and sort of like targeted transactions. And like, if you can de-anonymize one thing, then you can understand a whole portion of an ecosystem. What I am actually much more interested in this cryptocurrency thing that has become a possibility with this that is not a possibility with standard currency, at least not in the way that information is distributed right now, is analyzing the whole economy. I'm actually more interested in that. And like, I'm going to go do my research at this point. But like, if there's one thing we could be doing with cryptocurrency that you can't do with standard currency is have like a micro to macro view of how money is moving across these entire ecosystems. And like, that's one thing I would love to understand, because as we keep having this discussion about like, well, who's losing 80 million and doesn't care, that suggests to me that there's like macro plays happening inside of this like dark market. And there's nothing keeping us from modeling that, right? Like, there should be, the whole point of it, right, is like there's this transparency, everybody sees all transactions. Okay, where the fuck are our like data mining and data scientist nerds that actually look at like, well, how is all of this money moving, right? Like, just the miasma of value across these DeFi platforms. And frankly, we'll probably post this, and then Kyle's going to reach out and call me an idiot and tell me where this is happening online. So I look forward to that. But I think that's the more interesting aspect of this. Like, we're going at it the way that we would go about it in the standard currency world, and where the physics are different is in like the ability to see the macro of it all. And that's the part that we're missing. It's like, how much value is pumping into this place? How much value is like swishing around? And where is it actually ending up, coming out, going back, etc.? That's
how much of this research is guiding a typical enterprise corporate defender to protect his corporate network, or a lot of what we are like excited and fascinated about is the academic nature of the attacks and the kind of money at play. Like, what can a corporate defender learn from what we are finding out in this crypto theft world, other than the North Koreans are going to try to be a fake IT worker and get in and so on? Even then, they're just trying to get into these crypto banks and these crypto places. It feels
don't
like,
knock that, man. That everybody cares about that. Like, I was talking about this with my team, and like we pushed, like I was talking about this with Hagel yesterday, where it's like we pushed a piece about North Korea, about all these different threats, and like we talked about Chinese APTs, we talked about all these different big picture threats, and the one thing everybody has wanted to talk about, everybody, has been the North Korean IT workers thing. Like, people, I think it's what I realized yesterday is like, it's the first time all of this insider threat bullshit we've all been hearing about forever is actually relevant in some meaningful way. That isn't just like, oh, you happened to be working next to a pedophile this whole time and you didn't know. Or you happened to be working next to some white collar worker and you didn't know. And you go, okay, cool. What was I supposed to fucking do about that? But now you're telling me it's like a nation state thing, and it's a coordinated thing. But more importantly, it's a widespread thing that's affecting everybody, and like, you're going to lose value on the basis of it. Like, all of a sudden, everyone cares. So if anybody's sitting out there, again, like, I think the value is going to come from macro understanding. We are getting a lot of reporting of like micro insights, and like a lot of it seems to be really bad OPSEC based, or like, oh, we were able to get part of this bit of the infrastructure, look at all this shit, or like in our case, like, oh, we're crowdsourcing all this employment data, and like, look at the sheer amount of attempts. But once again, I would be really interested in having more of a macro understanding of like how big this phenomenon actually is. And that's where like unusual players we haven't seen speak out before should be coming into it. Where's Indeed.com? Where is LinkedIn? Where the fuck is LinkedIn? If there's somebody who probably is sitting on a fuck ton of fake employment data, it's going to be the people who are serving up the job postings. Greenhouse, LinkedIn, maybe Workday folks, Indeed.com,
HR platforms, yeah.
HR platforms. Like, and frankly, having talked to some of these HR platforms to say, hey, we're tracking, or not me, but St. Myers and Hagel reached out to some of these folks and being like, hey, we're tracking this. Do you guys want some of this intel? They were interested, but a lot of them were surprisingly uninformed and surprisingly, like, it's not even reactive. Like, I don't even think we got a reactive response.
How widespread is it, though? I feel like it's a lot of hype and a lot of, wait, let me finish. There's a ton of, everyone has a report out on North Korean IT workers. Mandiant has their thing. Seongsu has his. Everyone has this. It's a big, I mean, for the folks like us reading these reports, it feels like a big thing. But then they talked about thousands of companies in the United States. Like, that's a tiny, tiny, tiny number. Like, is this a real widespread embedded problem, or is it a tiny problem that's causing some damage?
No. So I'm starting to think of this thing like solar winds.
There are 1,000 companies around my neighborhood here.
Dude,
if you tell me that North Koreans have infected 1,000 companies, it's
hear me out. Hear me out. I'm not telling you that they have infected them. It's a little worse, because what we're seeing is the embarrassment of, like, richest period of this type of attack. We're not seeing it be efficiently used, which should scare everybody. And I say that because what we're realizing is this shit, the attempts are so wide. There's so much of it happening. I'm telling you, like, the small postings that were available at S1 got 1,000 job requests, and they were not targeted. And I say that because remember what I said maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago when I met with Dan Guido, who'd been the one who, like, almost got that whole, like, Zoom attempt. He's like, dude, we're a company of, like, sub 50 people. And we got an application.
But they're focused on crypto research. They're heavily involved in that.
But you're thinking that it's targeted. It's not. It's opportunistic, which to me says these people are hitting everyone. This is why I say solar winds. They're hitting a giant swath. They're getting access. They're getting opportunities into a bunch of places, and they don't have the time and the ability to.
They're hitting at scale. There's no data showing this. This is a lot of, like, vendor reports that are saying they're praying and spraying, but there's no.
That was my point. Look, why are so many vendors able to talk about this? Why are so many vendors able to talk about this? Look, why don't we get a bunch of reports about NSO? Well, we don't have samples. We don't have the materials. We don't have victims ourselves. But with DPRK IT workers, you shake one tree and then the whole forest starts coming back going, oh, we got it here. Oh, we saw it over here. We saw this little piece. We saw there, which tells you there's volume. And I'm telling you firsthand, we are one mid-sized cybersecurity company, and we had 1,000 attempts from 300 and something different.
You're a legitimate target for everyone.
I'd love to think that it was because we're hardcore and so smart and so desirable, but the way that it's being done is not careful, subtle. It's not consistent. It's not like the TTPs. Like, once you start, like, we're putting all this into Synapse. Like, once you start modeling the data across these things, you're like, this is shoddy. It's poorly done. You're mixing and matching identities. You're mixing and matching emails. You're cross-using telephone numbers. You're taking profiles and mismatching them with the names. The low level of sophistication is what tells you how careless this is, which does not reflect the idea that they're coming at us because we are a high-end target that's that much more worthwhile than going after one of the 1,000 companies around your house. I think they're going after fucking everyone. They're just spraying and praying. They're getting so many inbounds, they probably don't have enough people to actually infect the places they need to infect.
I think you're overhyping this, but go ahead.
He's not. As much as I'm in the middle, like,
you see?
I'm the one who needs to somehow to mediate this between you guys. There's one thing here which I want to say.
I'm skeptical that it's a massive at-scale problem.
Half of the people I spoke to recently have been hit by this. Half. Like they say, at least
people.
once. No. Half of the people, like not crypto, everybody. But here's a question. I got a question from one of our 72 listeners. So we
lost one.
I'm gonna put it like for you guys to comment because we
lost one listener.
We had 73 now. What?
We had 7. I guess we have 72 now.
We lost him because we couldn't answer. So the question he said, like, look, how come? Like, this is a super easy threat to mitigate. He said, you just meet the guy. You meet them for a coffee before hiring them, and it's over. Like, why don't you do that?
Remote workers. There are no meeting remote workers. How many people have you hired you've never met?
Meet a remote worker. You send someone to meet them, and it's over. Like, it's over because they can't get out of their cities in China or Russia or wherever the activity is coming from.
Yeah, the vetting processes have broken down. If these people are infiltrating organizations at scale, it means that the HR vetting hiring process, there's a big giant gap there somewhere.
They're not meeting them.
You know where the gap is? It's contractor work, right? Yeah. This is an extension of the gig economy, making it into the knowledge worker, quote unquote, space, right? If you Fiverize enough of the things you need for a company to the point where you also go, well, why don't we just hire one of these people off of the interwebs and let them do X, Y, Z?
That happens a lot, yeah.
Well, but that's honestly that's the other part we need to talk about here is, again, the sophistication is very low. So yes, they're trying across the board. I'm not telling you that they're successful across the board. I'm not telling you that they're in every big company. They're sleeping next to,
Why am I reading 5 reports a day on the North Korean threats?
Because I think the scary part of this is it's extremely widespread. And I don't think Google is going to have a problem with any DPRK-IT workers. I don't think we're going to have a problem with DPRK-IT workers. But you know who are going to have a bunch of problems? The 1,000 small companies near your house that don't have any vetting processes.
Especially the crypto bank ones.
Well, but forget the crypto bank, right? Like, how many of those are going to be like, oh, we are a small SaaS platform for women that like doing Pilates, and all we do is just coordinate for you to use your class pass to go to a local Pilates class. And a DPRK-IT worker now has control of that CMS, and they happen to be able to push downstream infections to whatever, right? That's the issue that you're getting into. Forget the crypto part. Hell, think about some of the recent crypto attacks we've heard about, like Bybit, right? It's not that you're not using this for the strategic first tier access. That one is well, what did we get? What have you got? But the question is what can you get downstream by virtue of the information that you gather here? What can you get downstream by virtue of the company that you gain access to, of their infrastructure, of their whatever? Remember, there were IT workers supposedly in the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Some of these infections could become some of these accesses could become really big problems. What you're getting into is the North Korean operations are so widespread that they're actually not very well optimized. They're not being efficient with the accesses they get. But if they had some, semi-organized mastermind actually paying attention across the board and trying to fuse some of these accesses in a strategic fashion, we would be fucked, extremely fucked. Starting with 3CX, going all the way down to this shit.
Face-to-face meetings for coffee.
Face-to-face meetings and have them repeat some phrases critical of the supreme leader.
That's their opinion about the supreme leader.
Yeah.
Costin, we're 25 minutes in, and magic money is the lead topic in, so you should be pretty excited.
What, are there no Ivanti O days today or something?
We'll get to the Ivanti O days. There's always Ivanti O days. But I want to start off, while we're on the subject, let's start off with Coinbase. Coinbase day before yesterday, had an SEC filing that basically outlined a breach that they suffered. And then yesterday, the CEO put out a blog post and a video that basically said, listen, we had some rogue overseas international contractors who, by law, had access to this Know Your Customer KYC data that included, driver's license, personal information. some rogue contractors were bribed to share that data with cyber criminals who eventually tried to extort Coinbase for $20 million. Coinbase refused the $20 million demand and put out a $20 million kind of a reward for finding these guys. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. What stood out to you first and foremost, Costin, when you looked at this breach?
Well, I like to say, first of all, that Coinbase, I think they're doing a lot of things in the background, and they are actually, this is probably just maybe the tip of the iceberg, one of those things that somehow they got lucky and this happened. But I think that in the background, and I can't say how I know, there's a lot happening in the sense that they are blocking thousands of these things. So there's a lot, obviously, with Coinbase being such a big company, and of course a lot of rich people actually using Coinbase and other platforms for investments. And there are previous stories about celebrities, simply falling victims to scams, to all sorts of impersonating attacks. And that's also kind of a huge economy, which is not necessarily North Korea related. Like these guys, for instance, they are looking to hire English native English speakers that can impersonate Coinbase operators, people who speak, in one example, I think I saw with the white accent, which was kind of like, we are looking for operators with the white accent. I don't know what that is.
You got to use your white voice, man.
Is it my white voice? Oh, no, I don't know. Pink voice. So I think that Coinbase is doing a lot, but this happens. It happens from time to time. Of course, they're going to reimburse all the people who lost money. It's obviously not a hack in the sense that like Bybit or the others who failed at security.
Didn't need to be.
Yeah. True, but again, if this was one of those, the losses would be insane, would be much, much, much bigger. And the fact that the criminals are asking for a 20 million reward fund, that actually tells you how small it is. Because like in this world, 20 million is nothing. I would have expected them to ask for $400 million ransom, just to scare everybody, and they're not gonna get it anyway. So you can very well ask for 400 if you want.
I think that's actually, if you ask me, totally ignorant hot take here, but this could have been a sizable, genuinely crippling problem to the cryptocurrency economy. And I think this is me giving credit to
still
Coinbase.
Is, I think, but go ahead.
No. But like, look, credit to Coinbase, right? Assuming everything they're saying is true and the way they're presenting it is all good, right? Which it seems to be, then there was an attempt at doing something that has crippled other places into multi-bajillionaire losses. And all they got out of it was like some PII and some customer information.
Disagree
but
with
not.
You.
But
let me spell out what they got. Just
please,
so we can specify it.
Do it.
Names, addresses, phone and email, mass social security numbers, last 4 digit only, mass bank account numbers and some bank account identifiers, government ID images, driver's license and passport, account data that included balance snapshots and transaction history, and limited corporate data, including documents, training material, and communications available to these support agents overseas that were supposedly bribed into giving up this information. Coinbase said they did not get login credentials or two-factor authentication codes, no private keys. They did not have the ability to move or access customer funds. The real risk is down the road where they're using this data to go after Coinbase users. And let me finish first, because this is where it gets, but this is where it gets fascinating. In the SEC filing, Coinbase says the preliminary cost of remediation and reimbursements could be in the range of 180 to 400 million, which means they've put aside, they've told the market, I know it's nothing in this context, but 400 million in theft from individual users is not a throwaway number.
Well, but it is to Coinbase. Clearly, they've literally said we will spend up to $420 million handling this.
True.
So look, I'm dead serious. Think about what just happened, right? These dudes just got the calm treatment. The calm treatment is We go and bribe some of your BPO people, like whatever people work for your shitty business process outsourcing company that answers phones. And that is one industry I really look forward to AI
not
fucking
a squishy
cratering.
soft spot, right? And not a big giant squishy soft spot as these customer support.
Not only a big squishy soft spot, but one that has proven unwilling to change, unwilling to grow, unwilling to improve in any way whatsoever. So it's a margins game built on the backs of, like, I'm not going to say slave laborers, I'm going to say wage laborers in like not nice places on earth. And the last thing they give a flying fuck about is security. And we saw that with a bunch of the comm stuff 2 to 3 years ago, where all these telcos just kept getting hacked and kept getting hacked and kept getting hacked. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? It's like, well, we all use these 4 companies that answer our phones, and they have VPN access into all of our environments. And it turns out if either those people get tricked, which is what happened to Cisco, or those people get bribed. And when you make, I don't know, $10 a day or whatever the fuck, and somebody comes and says, here's $5,000, walk away, they're going to fucking take it. And they probably should, right?
That's like the lapsus thing you're referring to, right?
And that's my point, right? That's the comm treatment. But look at what just happened. They got that, which worked on Cisco. It worked on a bunch of big fucking places that I won't name right now, because I don't even know which ones are our customers right now.
NVIDIA, Samsung, Ubisoft, even Microsoft and Okta. So yeah.
Everybody fell to this shit. And yet look at what just happened. Coinbase got the same treatment. They clearly got access, right? The things that you're describing are usually the things that a customer service representative needs in order to triage something, right? Account balances, your verification information, blah, blah, blah. They didn't even get 2-factor codes. They didn't get to the wallets. They didn't get to make transactions. They didn't get to walk into what is the de facto standard bearer of consumer cryptocurrency financials in the West. And they didn't get to do anything with it. So yes, this is actually fucking brilliant on the part of Coinbase, because they're playing the role of the FDIC. They're playing the role of the Federal Insurance for Consumer Financial Fraud and saying, oh, no, look, any transaction up until today that uses this will reimburse. Your money's safe. This is a bank. This shit's solid. So even though there's nothing we've done that's going to make you lose money in the immediacy, because our systems are well architected, thank you, Kyle, then now if you get scammed because of what happened with our shit, we'll reimburse you. I mean, that's what you expect the bank to do. And Coinbase is essentially saying, and this is why I started this by saying this could have been catastrophic to the cryptocurrency ecosystem.
Because it's Coinbase.
Because it's Coinbase. Because it is the mom and pop shop that people in America will download something based on a fucking, Super Bowl ad and spend their, the average American doesn't have $400 in their savings account, but maybe they'll have half an Ethereum somewhere. And that's going to be their play into the crypto market is Coinbase. If Coinbase had suffered a true catastrophic reputational, destroying hack, the cryptocurrency space would have, in my opinion, gone into a consumer winter for a good portion of time. Not an institutional investor winter. Those fucking addicts are going to keep gambling it away no matter what. But the consumer level would have probably suffered.
Costin, what I found Coinbase documenting here is a big, giant, squishy soft spot in the know your customer requirements.
Yes,
which puts all this information in the hands of some shoddy third-party customer call support center somewhere in the world. They didn't name where this customer call support center is. They didn't identify the people. They talked about firing some people earlier when their systems flagged it. But the bigger, larger issue is the KYC requirements require that Coinbase give this information to these people who are now proven mishandling it. How does that what does that tell you about our banking system and this whole requirement around
I think that's the top issue here, the KYC, and the fact that they didn't have to give it to others, by the way. The only reason like everyone is doing that, and actually pretty much everyone in this space is outsourcing the KYC part to someone, like to one company or another. And it's not just Coinbase, it's pretty much everybody, because they need to comply with these KYC requirements. And I think that is a disaster waiting to happen. Because I see a lot of, like in my feed on like all sorts of social media platforms, all the ads are like cheap KYC, pay only for verified accounts, things like that. From companies I never heard about, and it's like they're popping like mushrooms after the rain. Every day there's a new KYC company collecting all this private information, and God knows what kind of security they have and what will happen to them in the future. That's why me personally, if you ask me, I wouldn't like keep any kind of cryptocurrencies in online platforms ever. This is like, again, if you're asking what the cool kids are doing in this sphere, they don't keep their money in online platforms or like trading platforms or whatever. They keep them in cold wallets, buried in their gardens.
These platforms to turn it into real money? Like the magic has to end at some point.
Like the real cool kids
the magic
hodl.
never ends.
No, the real cool kids hodl. They'll hodl for life. Like they'll hodl until the Bitcoin reaches 1 million, 100 million. And
this
then
reminds me of the
maybe
GameStop people who
them.
became the like GameStop investors who like became like multimillionaires and then became average citizens and were still holding on to their fucking GameStop shit. Ryan, look at Signal. I literally just got a Coinbase fake verification code phishing text message right now.
Yeah. This is what Brian Armstrong is warning.
You want to call them right
now? Let's call them.
Let's do this.
Please call.
It's
This
called
is what Brian Armstrong is
Intel,
warning Coinbase customers that this is what they'll face moving forward with all these people, with all these people that have your driver's license and all this data. Costin, one thing he mentioned in the post while Juanito is calling the Coinbase people.
Can you put them on speaker?
Yeah, he'll put them on speaker.
And by the way, this was an iMessage.
There you go.
Try again.
Let me text them. Let me text them actually.
Text them. Hey.
Coinbase said they're working with industry partners and they've tagged the attackers' addresses so authorities can track and work to recover assets. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, sure. So, like this is one of the good things in these cryptocurrency stories, that once you tag the attacker's address and you start distributing them to all decentralized exchanges, they can actually block the money. So, for instance, even blockchains such as Tether, they can actually seize and block those transactions and recover people's money. And
so the funds were stolen.
What's that?
It suggests here that funds were stolen.
For sure, they were not stolen from Coinbase directly, but Coinbase people
customers
were phished like this with this kind of messages. And why does it work? Because the attackers call you and say, is it true your social security or your social security number ends in this? Oh yeah, sure. Is it true that your address is? Oh yes, it is. Is it true that your bank account? Oh, you know everything about me. It's clear. Well, we identify a security issue. We recommend that you move your money immediately, and we created a secure wallet for you with these seeds. Like these are the seed words of your secure wallet.
Yeah.
Move your money to this secure wallet seeds, and the moment you do that, you lose everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Look, let's not gloss over this KYC argument while I wait for our friendly scammer here to write me back over iMessage, as you pointed out.
You just validated your phone number as working.
I'm down to hang out with these guys. So it's probably a bunch of dudes in Miami. But look, you mentioned the KYC thing, and this is an interesting issue. It's actually something I don't want to gloss over, because in the absence of a central trust authority for identity of some sort, KYC is a legal requirement. And if there is such a thing, it's almost like a technically unfunded mandate. Which is to say, it's not the money part of it. It's the part where you are insisting that organizations need to have a certain level of verification without giving them any source, like any ground truth. No,
it's an anti-money laundering, anti-terrorism financing mechanism,
anti-money
right?
laundering, and I have not worked in the finance sector, but there is an authoritative OFAC list of sanctioned people. There are authoritative systems that you're supposed to verify against. There is some level of standard that says this is what it's like. HSBC keeps forgetting how it works, but this is what it's like to actually like verify whether you are moving money for the cartel de Sinaloa. They just forget, but like, you know, it's there, right? You have a way to check. When it comes to these KYC requirements on the crypto space, we're getting into much fiddlier, problematic territory. And then as you extrapolate that further with the kind of like ludicrously idiotic ideas we got out of the last administration where they wanted to do cloud KYC, you're in idiot territory, right? Like, what am I supposed to do? Look, let's say that I am Coinbase. I am dead certain that Coinbase is getting more value out of their own verification methods than they are
and the
from
KYC
any
data,
external KYC data. But dude, okay, that's Coinbase. They are the standard bearer for crypto. Cool. What the fuck is everybody else supposed to do? What are these employers supposed to do? Going back to the DPRK-IT worker thing, like the reason the DPRK-IT workers can do what they do is the other totally scammy, fraudy aspect of this KYC shit is the employer background check industry. And I'm dead certain every one of, if any Western company has gotten infiltrated by a DPRK-IT worker, I'm dead sure that there was some bullshit background check, like pill farm essentially, that they paid $25 to per applicant and got this is all perfectly good. Go ahead. And like the person doesn't exist, the name doesn't match the social security, whatever, but they didn't see like a DUI in their past. And just because they didn't try very hard. And that's where you look into like right under the hood, this whole industry of verification is complete horseshit. It's complete bullshit. There are ways we could do this in interesting fashions, especially in the internet age, that would require us playing ball with like some of the ad network providers, some of the mega telemetry providers. Like what is the Google authoritative identity verification database look like? Like that kind of, panopticon style shit could yield some very interesting results. I don't know that it's an internet we want to live in, but it is what it would look like to do this for real.
Sorry, I mean, what is the answer, though? What is the answer? Because we have all these financial institutions and banks and everyone collecting this KYC data, and they all manage it and treat it differently. And now we have a documented case of these companies being simply bribed to give it away. You have to imagine this is not the first and the only
not even close.
What's the fix cost?
There's an easy fix if you ask me.
Some sort of big, massive encrypted database that we can all just put this KYC data and everyone plugs into it? Like, what's the answer?
I think there's an easy fix, but that might, let's say, require some kind of compromises. To me, that fixes a lot of things, which is some kind of a digital ID associated with your person, like your ID card having a chip with a private key inside that you use to authenticate with your bank, that you use to vote, and that you use to authenticate with Coinbase. Like, that is the solution, in my opinion.
Last time someone asked call for an internet ID card, you know what happened, right?
Yeah, but look, this is already being implemented in Europe, and there's countries like Estonia where this is already a reality.
What
and
is
you can
reality?
use that.
Can you spell it out a little bit? What's
the ID card with the chip that you can use to authenticate against your bank, and you can use
managed by the government.
They use it for voting and everything.
Correct. Yeah. It's managed by the government. It's tied to your identity, and that is essentially your ID card that works offline and online, and that authenticates you with any bank where you have accounts, not
what's the trade-off? Is there a privacy trade-off that blocks everyone else from trying to do this?
Yes, the privacy is that you need to have one of those, and you need to know how to use them in order to be able to access your bank accounts or to vote and so on.
It's a pretty classic conundrum, it's a classic conundrum, and one that in the United States we actually would feel more. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but only as of May 7th did real ID verification become a requirement for U.S. travel. And that's because getting people in the U.S. to update their fucking IDs or like even have them in the first, like how many Americans?
This thing is only for travel, like to upgrade to something that's it's not necessarily being used for anything else. But
you get into this weird trade-off scenario because remember, we are coming at it from the perspective of well-educated city folk who like the interwebs, but like that's not what a vast swath of Americans is. That's not what a vast swath of much older people are, right? Like that notion, for example, anytime I see when I go travel now, like I'm a big United guy these days, and like, dude, United won't print you a fucking boarding pass anymore. They expect you to have a phone with battery that's going to get you through your whole fucking flight. And I obviously I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but the requirements for being a functional citizen in this society keep becoming more and more not just technological but financially barred, right? Like you have to be able to afford a functioning phone, which is it's a pretty high barrier. We don't usually give a fuck about the people below that barrier, but we're not talking about fancy security. We're just talking about living, right? Just being a human person.
If I may ask, what's this about being able to vote in the US without an ID? Can you explain the story? Like, why is everyone complaining? Like, voter ID, no voter ID. What's that all about? Like, it's forbidden to show your ID when voting.
No. Look, I actually don't know what the standards look like, and they're very different state by state. But part of the problem is that this country has a terrible history around using voting requirements to try to keep marginalized populations away from voting. So if you're in a district where, let's say, let's make a totally hypothetical scenario. You have you have a district where 90% of the people are such low wage earners. They're employed by one single factory, and the factory runs Monday through Friday from 9 to 7 p.m. And you only have your voting is only on a Tuesday between noon and 4. You've basically kept 90% of the people in that district from voting. And that's like that's the more manipulative version of like stuff that started happening around like the Jim Crow era, where you would get like, oh yeah, in order for these Black Americans to vote, they're absolutely allowed to vote, but they need to take this like 70 question test or like this this test that ensures that they're literate and they're not being manipulated and they know enough about U.S. history. And it was like, oh, if you didn't fill out the test perfectly, you can't vote. Like there's all kinds of history there that's more about disenfranchisement. It doesn't fit into a 21st century context. It doesn't fit into an identity, the identity conversation we're having. But again, like this is where you get into these weird fucking trade-offs.
How can you vote without an ID?
If you ask some people here, you can vote without a pulse. I don't really know what's true or not. And frankly, like I don't super give a fuck at this point. Like,
but the point you're making, Juan, you're making, Juan, is demanding ID potentially disenfranchises a subset of the population that is unable to get an ID?
I'm saying that is a concern. I'm not saying that is my main concern, but I'm saying that it is a concern and that there is a much wider swath of the population for whom some of these measures are prohibitive. Now, the problem is, again, unfunded mandates and requirements, right? If Real ID were a proper implement, like this is where we get into even the TP-Link discussion and the way that I was bitching about it before, where I go, look, you get one bullet, right? You're getting Americans onto Real ID. Why the fuck it isn't like a digital standard of an ID that has some kind of virtual component, that has a chip in it, that does whatever, that allows you, like the Estonians, to Kostin's point, thank you, Russia, for giving us such a technologically developed Estonia. The Estonians have been explaining this shit since DEF CON 2012 or something. Like, there's a really great talk about how they defended the voting infrastructure of Estonia and how the real ID cards were a part of that. So, like, it's not like an untested standard that nobody has talked about or some bullshit idea for some far-flung European nation. This is a thing that's been around for a while. The question here, like, getting back to kind of the central, like, core issue that you have in this stuff is as you start to enact more of this KYC stuff, you are creating these sort of like centralized pockets of information. Right now, it's a very distributed insistence on people collecting a fuck ton of information they don't know how to secure. And that's problematic for obvious reasons. But if you wanted to solve this in some semi-centralized fashion, I think this is where I would like to see, like, if there's any cypherpunks still out there with breath and energy left in their bodies, this is actually not a cryptocurrency problem. This is a cryptography problem, where the real issue you get into is having a more widely available, widely adopted standard of secret exchange that folks can rely on. Because the problem that you get with needing centralized databases is, how do you verify something without leaking information that the person didn't originally have? How do I go, I have Ryan Narain, his name, his passport number, his social security number, his phone number, his IP address, his blah, 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 and I would like to verify that against this external database, please. And so what, I'm going to hand you the 8 pieces of information that I have? No, right? How do I verify with you without giving you information you didn't currently have? That is a cryptography problem that is not unsolvable at all, but there is no like signal protocol like standard for secret sharing that if we say, oh, if only the US government had implemented this with some well-developed data, if only Google had implemented this same standard, then we would have verification solved in some semi-anonymized capacity. That's what you're missing. Because otherwise what it becomes is, well, let me give you a fucking ID number and like tag you for life, which is what we do with social security numbers. And like the shit doesn't change. It becomes another source of vulnerability, and it becomes another source of like centralized information. There's nowhere to verify it. So really, I'm just exchanging info in order to show you that I have info, and you hope that you have some way of saying that it's consistent. But we see what that turns into. It turns into like T-Mobile not wanting to pay, what was it, like 50 cents for verification just to make sure your ID was even real when you walked into the store. So, yeah.
Costin, just to answer the question, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I vote here, and I'm required to produce a driver's license identification. As soon as I get to the polling station,
I've never been able to vote without an ID. I don't know where the fuck this is happening. Yeah.
Driver license is nothing, in my opinion. You should vote with your ID card, not driver license, not...
That's our ID cards, bro.
Our ID card here is our driver's license.
The only way you can convince Americans to go get a fucking ID is to make it prohibitive not to have one. So you either need it to drive or you need it to fly.
So like that's driving is kind of a confirmation that you are like literate, understanding instructions, able to remember things and vote.
It's the only test that Americans subject themselves to of some kind of capability, and it is a low fucking bar. We don't even ask people to we don't even ask people to learn how to parallel park. No, it's all automatic, but we don't even ask people to learn how to parallel park. In some of these cities, you cannot park without parallel parking, and you don't have to do it in the fucking driving test.
You do. In New York, you have to do. Thanks to New York for teaching me how to do that.
Not in Florida.
All right.
Well, I think you're trading convenience, for many things. And
guys, we have Ivanti.
We're just not trading our freedom, son. I'm not giving you my gun or my name.
For many years, I was traveling to the States or like some other place, and people were trying to use the stripe on my credit card. I was like, look, in Romania, which is a country at the end of the world, we only use the chips. Like, why do you still use the stripe? And they're like, well, we have a lot of American tourists and their cards don't have chips. and like even before that, people were like putting the physical credit card on a machine and like moving some kind of a brick on top of it to to get the embossment. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, yeah, this is for the Americans who don't have stripes on their cars.
I changed out of my PJs when I was getting on the podcast to wear my nice PivotCon hoodie. Shout out to Pasquale and Bartek. But clearly this conversation necessitates a totally different vibe. So
one question. Yeah. Is it like shaving or epilation? How do you call it?
Neither at this point. Look at this, man. What
do you use? Like, what's your method?
Oh, nothing from here. Well, from here
we gotta get
here.
The Ivanti.
But all of this it's quite a bit of work, actually. I appreciate that you're paying it. Yeah, it's a lot, man.
You look incredible, You look incredible, man.
I hit my goal weight yesterday. That made me realize I need a new goal weight. So
someone mentioned watching the YouTube videos of the podcast over time and noticing you slowly disappearing. So
just vanishing. I'm hoping I'll just vanish. Like I just literally just
he's getting smaller and smaller.
Listen, just disappear.
We have news of a fresh Ivanti Ode exploited in the wild.
This one is my favorite.
This one is my favorite. I know we've beaten the Ivanti and Sonic Wall and Fortinets into the ground, but this one is very, very interesting and specific. It's two vulnerabilities chained together for unauthenticated remote code execution. Ivanti credits CERT EU, so shout out to the Europeans for finding it and sending it to us. We are aware of a very limited.
Your friend Freddie still?
I don't know who's there.
Freddie left. Yeah, he has his own consultancy nowadays.
Oh, good for him. Good for Freddie.
Ivanti says we are aware of a very limited number of. We are aware of a very limited number of customers. Fuckers.
You know Freddie, bro.
I want to set up the story so we can get into the intricacies of it. There are two flaws: CVE-2025-4427 and CVSS score 5.3, and 2025-4428 CVSS score 7.2 authentication bypass issues that lead to remote code execution. Now, Ivanti in this case,
that, bro? That's some
Ivanti
fake news, bro.
Listen, this is not our code. This is a defect in two open source libraries that we use. Like everyone uses these open source libraries. The vulnerabilities were actually in these affected libraries. Costin, jump in.
Yeah, you set me up for failure here, but the good news is that if you know one Ivanti vulnerability, you know all of them. But the thing with this one, like this, there was one thing which attracted my attention. That was other people are saying like, listen, it's not as much as a problem with the library, but the way that Ivanti was using that library. So as we say, devils and send the details here, and I couldn't notice the fact here that they're talking about. Yeah, there's like this report, by the way, from Watchtowr, and I love the fact that the Watchtowr researchers look into all these Ivanti advisories, which have basically zero information, and they try to make sense of the patches to understand for the rest of us what really happened. And one thing attracting my attention, they say, Ivanti passes user supply strings straight into a message template function that evaluates Java expression language. So, like here, there are like a lot of things which immediately like, this can't be, probably it is, right? One of those Java things like that people still use in 2025, which again is not a big surprise, but I mean, we try to get rid of Java almost everywhere. I think that there's a few projects.
Not even Google could get rid of Java, bro. Like they invented Go to get rid of Java, and they still use Java.
Yeah, they got Thompson to get to create a new language so they can get rid of C and Java, but nevertheless, and there's of course there's Elasticsearch, which I think everybody hates that it runs on Java. Like I couldn't understand,
and yet everybody runs it.
And yet everybody powers half of the internet. Nevertheless, that was like one of the things which attracted my attention. That like the way that you use a library, maybe the library is not necessarily the best in the world, the most secure, but it's super important to understand how to use it and how you integrate it into your products. And not only that, but when you do that, you need to keep an eye for updates and constantly keep it up to date, because otherwise you are entering this kind of open source nightmare where you inherit all the bugs in pretty much all the libraries that you link with. And the other thing, by the way, which I thought was cool here, is how do you get nowadays 4-digit CVEs, right? Because most of them are 5 digits, 6 digits. So it feels
old,
like
right?
the 4 digits, you're elite. Yeah.
You think
can you imagine the race at the end, at the beginning of the year?
Is Ivanti pre-reserving a range?
Can you imagine a market where you sell these IDs, the lower number IDs, like they do with the license plates in Dubai?
We're in May. Can we get to? Have we ever gotten to 6-digit CVE? Because Ivanti, Fortinet, and them, they might get us there. They're pumping numbers, bro.
I have seen.
Look, I love this one. And I'm fucking glad that I actually looked at this one just a tiny bit more than I normally would. Because every time you post these fucking appliance CVs, I'm like, oh, another one. Another one. And who gives a fuck? But this one is fucking phenomenal. It is not the appliance. It's an MDM server. This is a fucking endpoint management thing. So let's start with the insane level of downstream compromise that you're enabling with this shit. But better yet, they're fucking lying about it. They're lying about the vuln. They're trying to and they're so dumb and inexperienced that they think blaming an open source library is gonna make this less problematic to them. Whereas in reality, it means that everyone is now paying attention going, what fucking open source library? We all use open source libraries.
They never identified it in the advisory either. That's correct. The other thing. The advisory, they kind of threw some unnamed open source libraries under the bus. It took third-party reversing.
Sons of bitches.
Third-party reversing to figure out that it was this, what was it called? Hibernate Validator Library. That did indeed include a vulnerability, but it was only triggered because of errors on Ivanti's side in implementing it.
That's not a bug with a, and they're fucking bracing. They're we have to see if this open source library might need additional CVEs. We're no, bro, you just fucked up around it, right?
Correct.
It could be open SSH. If you fucking leave the keys just lying around in a .txt file next to your web shell, then it's not an open SSH vulnerability. You're just a fucking idiot.
But what does it say about your software development practices when, and I go through this advisory is a beauty, by the way. I encourage everyone to read it. But one line here that stands out to me is one of the ways we do this using open source code responsibly is by employing enterprise-grade software composition analysis tools and SBOMs to identify potential issues in the libraries we use. This is your software development practice. You take you use some software composition analysis tools. They generate an SBOM and it says clean, go, and you ship this piece of product.
I honestly think they lost the source code years ago. That's the only explanation I've got. I think they lost the source code a long time ago, and they're just hoping they can bite patch their way to safety before, until something new comes along. Because it makes no fucking sense that you can be this, you can get smacked in the face 10,000 times and just be not worth it. We can ride this one out. And look, let's not even get into the whole pay with your wallet, the market, blah, blah, blah. Sure. But even in any form of just survival instinct, something, you could at least come out and say, actually, we're going to rewrite this whole component in Rust. And it's okay. All of our products are shit, but the next version is going to be real good, bro. We're going to just kick it off from the ground up. There's nothing. There's no initiative. There's no SFI. There's no Ivanti, Fortinet, whomever didn't all put their heads together and go, all right, guys, let's form a cartel of a single unified software platform and pay a couple of these fucking nerds to get off our backs. They don't give a fuck.
This was the first company to sign the pledge, the first company to join the line to sign the pledge, get their photo taken, the CEO with the hostage video out of the hotel room describing how security is going to be the gospel here. We still have the
I think he lives in that hotel room now? What's going on with it? Did anybody get him out of there? Or?
I know I sound like a broken record with this pledge, but this pledge is it's fascinating. The Europeans just signed their own, by the way.
CISA's dead, bro. I don't know what the fuck you're talking
right,
about.
Right, but all these ex-CISA people are running around raising money to launch secure by design companies that drive on this pledge thing that they've built.
Pledging as a service.
Pledging as a service. But I bring it up. I bring it up because I want to throw a little thing in here with the pledge. Google had its defense of this Justice Department lawsuit that's probably going to require them to divest Chrome. We discussed this on the podcast previously, and we had testimony from Heather Atkins, who is a VP of security engineering at Google, 22 years at Google. But we had testimony from her saying, listen, this idea of divesting Chrome is going to be have security implications because you're asking us to give this Chrome data to people who are not good at security. And one of the points she specifically made is that Google and 300 other companies have signed this CISA Secure by Design pledge, whereas these companies that are seeking this data, this OpenAI, Yahoo, Meta, Perplexity, DuckDuckGo, have not signed the pledge. So the pledge is being held up in court. The pledge is being held up in court as like, look, we're serious and those guys are not. And I bring it up now because Ivanti is first and foremost up front. We support this pledge. We signed this pledge. This pledge comes with a very, very specific requirement around transparency and being able to communicate
picture taking and blogging.
And this is a fucking 2 years later, and this is the kind of advisories we're getting out to Ivanti.
It's almost like there was
everybody's
no
getting
teeth.
popped at OD, but
look,
it's almost like there were no teeth to this shit.
At this point, maybe you're better off if you didn't sign the pledge. I mean,
Apple didn't sign the pledge.
It looks better on you if you didn't sign it, right?
I mean, how silly. And I bring this up because we have Jenny Stilly, Jack Cable, people we all respect and do great work, but they're now launching companies helping people to get.
And Nicole Perlroth is out there starting companies. Who gives a fuck, bro?
Come on,
like,
man.
it's all, anybody can fucking do it at
what
this
are we
point.
doing,
It doesn't
though?
matter.
Like, what are we doing?
Like,
we're fucking rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. It's fine. Like, look, let's focus on the thing with Google. And I like Heather a lot, and she is 1,000% correct that the data that you're gonna get out of Google and hand to some party X, which is almost certainly gonna be some Saudi, UAE, or Chinese funded shell company that ends up buying Chrome or whatever, will be less secure than at Google. Almost certainly, because frankly, Google
100%.
is one of the most secure places on Earth. It may be the most secure place on Earth. And so anywhere you take it is going to be less secure. The thing that Google is missing in this age of like self-destructive populism is that people are not interested in voting for status quo protectionism. They're not interested in voting for the reasonable but familiar devil. The devil we know is no longer the devil we're comfortable with. And that's the problem with Google here. Look, do I think this is going to go anywhere? No. I don't think the DOJ is going to have any steam to do any kind of antitrust regulation under this administration.
I think there's a big tech blowback that could see it happening. I think there is.
Look, man, this is a transactional administration that has zero interest in putting any kind of gunking in the gears for American corporations. I will be extremely surprised. And look at Microsoft, man. It took how many years in court? Like, the fucking Microsoft antitrust thing was like 10 fucking years of Bill Gates going to court. And we got some like half-assed judgment out of it. And that's the best we've ever done with any tech companies. Even if DOJ were like, this is the fucking hill we're going to die on, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So I appreciate that Google takes it seriously, but let's be honest about what could happen here. So I'd rather game this out on the basis of like thought experiment rather than an assessment of possibility, probability. Hell, if anything, Google's probably defending themselves in America because if the Americans are willing to do anything like this, then the Europeans are probably going to get a lot of ideas. And nobody likes it when Europe gets ideas. So
I like it.
Yeah, and that's how you end up with your fucking bottle caps attached to your bottles so that, I don't know, turtles don't choke on whatever.
But also chips on our credit cards.
Let me pivot to
Europe.
you.
We have chips on our credit cards? We have chips on all of our credit cards. We just choose not to use them.
Speaking
we
of
have
Europe,
safety on all of our guns. We don't fucking click it on. What are we, a bunch of...
Speaking of Europe, speaking of Europe and this call to action to stop freeloading, we have the Europeans coming up with their own. The Europeans just announced their own vulnerability database. We've discussed the CVE funding issue with MITRE. We've discussed NVD having problems enriching that data. This is a nightmare. The Europeans announced this week that they're going to have the EUVD, a high level of interconnection of publicly available information coming from multiple sources, CSIRTs, vendors, blah, 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 including CISA.
Transmitted disease.
Including CISA and including CVE. It all kinds of relies on each other. Kostian, why do you guys need your own vulnerability database? And you have high hopes for what this will do? It feels like fragmentation of this space in... Oy, oy, oy. Juanito's cat just said hello.
Yeah. He's not having this shit.
Why do you have your own vulnerability database, Kostian? Is it necessary?
Look, that's a question to you. Like, 'cause I think if the original vulnerability database was stable, funded, like whatever, solid, I don't think that this would be necessary. But unfortunately, what is the general opinion in Europe nowadays? And this is like super sad, if you ask me.
You can't rely on the Americans to give it for free anymore?
Correct.
Oh, no.
Not that you can't rely on the Americans to give it for free, but we can't rely on the Americans at all. Because, like, although they have chips on their credit cards, they don't use them. Like, they have, like, safety for their guns. Although there's, like, a limit of the number of bullets you can buy, they buy it in tons anyways. And
you make your own.
Look at the cats. I mean, just look at the cats. So, to me, honestly speaking, this is good. I somehow worry about like this remote connection with this NIS2 directive, which
it's part of the NIS2 directive, right?
Correct.
I still don't
which
understand
everyone is
this
freaking
NIS2
about.
bullshit.
And to be honest, I fear a bit about bureaucracy, which is perhaps the equivalent of the no safety
Europeans
on your guns in Europe.
Really? You guys? Yeah. You sure?
So
is this a new thing?
The thing that worries me, yes, it's the integration with the NIS2 directive and probably the NIS3 directive that will come in the future. And the fact that the caps will have to be tightened, like the CVEs will have to be linked to the caps and so on. But otherwise, if you ask me, this in the long run, this is good. Like this is part of what's happening in the world, and an alternative
What is
not
good?
necessarily
that Europe has their own, and China has their own, and the US has their own.
Why the fuck didn't they have one before?
Yes.
Why?
I think this is good, absolutely, because you don't have to rely on whoever to report vulnerabilities, to collect them, to create classifications, to decide if this Ivanti is 5.4 or if it's like 9.7.
Right? I don't know, guys, because if you read the language real careful, like, they're not doing any fucking verification of their own. They're collecting a bunch of open source information from a bunch of other people's databases, and apparently these, like, random certs are going to contribute, which is like the classic hand-wavy
it's an
bullshit.
Aggregation.
Like, it's the KEV. It's the known exploited vulnerabilities list. It's not a national vulnerability database. They're not verifying whether these are real vulnerabilities or whether they are actionable or what score they should get. They're crowdsourcing. And that's
but it's
not
necessary,
a
though. This crowdsourcing doesn't exist, though. It's what's happening is that you have all these fragmented things everywhere, and no one. The attempt here, as I understand it, the attempt here is to like provide a place where you're like on top of aggregating things from everywhere else.
That is some recorded future bullshit. I don't need you to aggregate a bunch of low fidelity data and put it in a fucking pie chart.
Everywhere.
Like, I don't need you to put it in a fucking pie chart. We can all Google. Moreover, O3 can make a pie chart for me right now. I need you to verify the whether technically this is a vulnerability.
That's the NVD, though, right? That's the enrichment that should be coming out of the NVD.
Dude, look, the problem with national vulnerability databases is the need for that verification. That's why it takes so long. That's why they were backed up forever. It was so hard to get a CVE number. It would take 2 months. But it's like, it's this thankless fucking work where you somehow get magical technical people who are available and such polyglots that they can investigate vulnerabilities in a bunch of different software that they've never seen before and validate whether the vulnerabilities are real.
Sounds like an impossible task, though.
It is an impossible fucking task, which is why, like, look, man, nobody likes the American National Vulnerability Database, but no one's fucking dying to start their own. I didn't see anybody running to become the vuln verifier of America.
There are a bunch of startups. There are a bunch of venture capital backed startups trying to be the replacement, and that comes at its own set of problems, like having an Israeli KYV.
Know your vulnerability.
Know your vulnerability. I mean, Ivanti's trying to escape KYV as much as fucking possible.
And shout out.
Look, that's the point. What is the objective measure of any of this? Nobody needs you to come crowdsource information. We are living in the age of easy analysis, easy fucking aggregation. I don't need you to crowdsource this shit for me. I need you to verify it and give me an objective metric that says, you know how Ivanti just told you that this is not a real vuln in their product and that it's not a big deal? Actually, it's a huge fucking deal and it is a vuln in their product.
Yeah, but who's going to pay for that? Right?
Governments. That's the whole fucking point. So, like, look, I'm happy for the EU to decide to play. My question here would be, where the fuck were you guys before? Which is to say, it's not like the National Vulnerability Database in the States. It's not like NIST was just doing so great and at such high throughput that they didn't need any help at all.
Well,
so where the
opposite.
fuck? Yeah, they needed help desperately. Where the fuck were the Europeans back then? And frankly, if you're going to take another virtue signaling victory lap, how about you put some fucking talent behind it and tell us that you're going to verify anything out of what you're seeing?
Shout out, NCSC, you can do better than just aggregating.
NCSC is not in Europe, bro. They're just floating out there somewhere, being extremely talented. But
I mean, somebody's got to fund it. The European, when you say the Europeans funding it through the EU, it's coming from all these rich companies.
Someone's got to fund it, and someone's got to do the work. And what we care about, like, look, funding rains from the sky and then magically disappears, as we see with CISA. But like, okay, cool. Let's say there's those $500 million that are vanishing out of CISA are going to appear in the EU for this new vulnerability database. How are you going to spend it? Are you going to call Katie Masuris and Dave Eitel and Mark Dowd and be like, yo, guys, we really want to do this one for real. How do we create a state-of-the-art verification mechanism? How do we leverage this aardvark thing that you guys created? How do we bring new technology into this problem? We don't want it to be a forever problem. We want it to be a problem that's actually getting solved. Where's the R&D lab? Nobody was saying, oh, you know what the problem is here? These fucking certs are not emailing each other. Let's go make sure they email each other. Like, get the fuck out of here. It's like Cienspo bureaucrat bullshit. Like, we're fucking up, but at least we were doing something. And now the minute it starts to go away, you're like, oh, we'll replace it with hand waving. Okay, thanks.
We spent a lot of time on this show.
This feels like the vulnerability moment of DeepSeek in the AI world. Like, oh my god, the Chinese, they have their own vuln. We need to step up our game. Like, yeah.
Hey man, shout out to Kristen Del Rosso, LabsCon 1. Kristen Del Rosso had a phenomenal talk where she compared the American NVD with the Chinese NVD, and you'll never believe the differences between them. It was fascinating, but absolutely fascinating. But the whole point of it wasn't, look at how easily we could have created our own NVD. This is a serious problem that requires a lot of expertise, and it very much is in the realm of what governments should solve. But you don't solve it through press releases, contrary to what CISA may have taught you.
ENISA, ENISA is the cybersecurity.
Focus on self-promotion.
Wait, we get to that in a second. You guys are going too fast for me. ENISA is the agency in the European Union that's managing this. Is that a CISA equivalent, Costin? Do we trust ENISA? Are these guys serious people? What do we know about this?
I don't know if they're the. That's like you give me like one of these cornerstones.
It gives me all the softball questions. Just gives me all the softball questions.
What do you know about these? No, my point is this a serious thing that we should take seriously, or is this just another small European agency creating some bureaucracy somewhere, aggregating
technical reports before? They've released some technical stuff in the past.
Sure, of course, and they're behind all these new initiatives, like security initiatives such as NIS. But like, if you ask me if it's like, I don't know if it's serious, I would say it's serious in the sense that it's a serious message to the other agencies doing their vulnerability programs and database and whatever, in the sense that unless you innovate, step up your game, there'll be more and more of these appearing all over the world, as kind of the lack of leadership is disappearing.
The geo-fragmentation of this stuff is inevitable.
Lack of leadership.
Yeah. The French will need their own, and everyone will need their own, because it's going to start to become kind of like, how do I rely on data produced by someone else?
Why is it the certs, man? Like the fucking look. I haven't interacted with a whole lot of European certs. The ones I have interacted with, for example, Cert Belgium, are phenomenal. Cert Belgium is fucking great. They put on a conference every year. They interact with folks. Well, I don't know if the Dutch cert itself is good. Dutch IC is good. And like that's what we're seeing. Like the reason we take the UK seriously is the UK didn't take like the people that are bogged down trying to make security work across a government with very little resources and put them in charge of a highly technical, difficult, specialized problem. They took people out of GCHQ, one of the greatest signals intelligence agencies in the history of mankind, and said, hey, leave your very important work that you're doing here and go do this very important work over there on behalf of the public. And that's why NCSC's reports are fucking phenomenal. It's because you took experts and you had somebody like Ian Levy, somebody genuinely brilliant, that you gave an opportunity to coordinate a real process. I am not bothered by the Europeans starting their own initiatives. I desperately want the Europeans to start their own initiatives. I would just like us to stop getting so high on our like pompous supply of nothing and actually put some fucking resources behind these problems. You need genuinely hardcore technical talent involved in this. And frankly, do what the American government could never get out of its own way to do. Pay some fucking consultants. The American government used to pay the most brilliant scientists in America and everywhere else.
Isn't that what the MITRE CVE program is? We're paying this millions and millions of dollars for MITRE to manage a CVE program?
You're paying some random folks at MITRE. And what you're going to get is the same thing that you're going to get if you paid a bunch of random folks at Booz Allen.
But that's what you're asking for. Pay somebody to do something.
No. I did not say, please go pay somebody to do something. I said, go find some talent, some real talent, and pay them to design a program for you, and then follow through with that program. What Luta Security does for companies right now, right? Not the bug bounty bullshit. The how do we help you in your fixing and development cycle so that you can do something with the bugs is the kind of mentality shift that you need to go into these things. A national vulnerability database is an old school concept. Instead of rushing to replicate the old concept, how about you pay 5 people who actually know their shit to sit in a room and say, how would you solve this problem? Then come out and say, this is now the European standard. Get with the fucking program. All of you need to put some money in a pot, and then we're going to beg Mark Dowd to spend some time on this shit. Make it worth his fucking while. How about you do that?
Speaking of doing that and copying from the US, the Brits, the NCSC announced a software security code of practice, which is very much like our Secure by Design pledge that calls...
Don't say that.
Well, it's more or less the same thing. It's like you're codifying these secure by default expectations for software vendors, enterprise software vendors. And the idea is that it's very much like the pledge, 14 baseline principles covering...
Why are you doing that to them? They're our friends. They gave us our keynote for last week. How could you put Chich out like this?
I'm asking Chich now to explain to me why this is different. Tell me why you think this is different from our pledge. Why we believe it will have more teeth. There's some history here, Costi.
Can we get Chicho on the podcast?
Bro,
he promised, I'm going to call it out. He said he will come on the podcast. When we were together in Strasbourg last year in September, he said, I will come on the podcast. So,
can you tell the audience who Chich is?
Yeah,
they don't know who Chich is.
Paul Chichester? A legend, quite a legend in the industry.
And he's at the NCSC managing things, right?
Correct.
Chich, I'm sorry, do not undersell Chich. Chich is he is the institutional knowledge of the UK intelligence community in cyber embodied. This man, apart from being incredibly kind and a very good friend, has been around for like 2 decades. He's like the Rob Joyce of the UK in the sense of like, dude, more so.
Why is their pledge different from ours?
Okay, fine. I'll talk about the pledge. No, the reason the pledge is different from ours is there is a history of the UK government taking very well-informed, not regulatory frameworks and suggestions and whatnot from, again, their very well-informed side of the house, floating them as sort of like, I'm not going to say optional, but good faith endeavors, and then turning them into legal requirements. So there is a path. And I wish I'd heard about this before. I think Bo was the one who kind of educated us about it. Yeah. So they actually had like this IoT requirements framework, which followed a similar path as this, apparently.
2018. Let me spell it out. Back in 2018,
please.
There was a voluntary code of conduct for consumer IoT security. And that eventually became law, Product Security and Telecommunications Infrastructure Act, which now makes it illegal to sell smart devices with things like universal default passwords, weak disclosure channels in the UK. So that voluntary kind of pledge in the beginning was used to kind of help draft the law, and now it is law. You can't do these things. And the idea here is that the NCSC is setting up this 14-point framework for enterprise security vendors to think. And the goal, or not the goal, but like the hope is that it somehow has teeth. Because the knock against our Secure by Design pledge is that Ivanti gets to get away with nothing for 2 years and showing updates that they do have a disclosure program and saying
they're getting worse.
They're getting progressively worse.
They just fucking lied to us. They just lied to us. They're getting worse.
The idea is that the Brits here have a path to some sort of teeth. Is that what the hope is?
The idea here is that the Brits have shown their teeth already. So the fact that they're tackling this problem in the usual good faith shows us like, look, these dudes have done good work. There's a reason I stan NCSC. NCSC does not really disappoint me. It does not regularly make me sad. And therefore, when NCSC proposes something, I will listen and take it seriously. That's what happens when you build. Like, again, we keep shitting on CISA for doing all this self-promotion stuff, and I think that's an inaccurate way of stating the problem. There's nothing wrong with CISA doing self-promotion. There was nothing wrong.
CISA doing self-promotion.
There was nothing wrong with Jen doing self-promotion in the way any director does self-promotion. Chris Krebs did self-promotion. Every director does some level of self-promotion. You're an executive that is promoting an organization in order to showcase its value and gain greater funds and collaboration. That's what an executive is supposed to do for an organization. The problem was never the self-promotion. The problem was that there was no follow-through. They would make up random bullshit for Jen to announce on stage, and the next week when you went to ask them about it, it didn't exist. And nor did it exist a month later, nor 6 months later.
Sounds like self-promotion to me, but go ahead.
It's self-promotion with nothing substantive behind it. So
the self-promotion point, just for the audience's sake, the self-promotion point that we're talking about here. The new administration, the White House, proposed budget cuts that would shave $491 million off of CISA's upcoming budget. And one of the throwaway lines into why we need to shave
salty
$500 million is, well, they went off mission and went into this Ministry of Truth thing, which is like the official thing. But the line here that caught our attention,
which is bullshit. Let's be clear here, right? That is bullshit.
The throwaway line was CISA was more focused on censorship than on protecting the nation's critical assets and put them at risk due to poor management and inefficiency, as well as a focus on self-promotion, which was like a targeted line in there, coming after they have published all her meetings, her calendar.
We never got an answer on whether that was like standard or not, but it did seem super kind of salty.
Correct. Look, as well as this here as well. Salty as hell. Deliberate and salty.
I don't want to shit on Jen. The problem is not Jen alone. It's not about that. The problem is the follow through. The problem is, what are you actually doing with the money you're providing? What do you do with the reputation you build up? Like, NCSC has built up a reputation for being reliable, for giving information that is timely, actionable, desirable, for thought leading and collecting genuine feedback, and then doing something to advise government efforts into acting in a way that's actually in the better interests of their government by virtue of expertise. We never fucking heard anything like that from CISA. We didn't hear a fucking, not a whiff of it. Moreover, I say that this whole censorship thing is bullshit because I don't think CISA could have censored anything if they thought it was the most important mission on Earth. I don't think CISA could have accomplished that either. That's the thing. You're making them seem 10 feet tall when, like, they could barely get out of their own fucking way, man. Like, we would literally hand them completed intelligence products ahead of anybody else and go, here, help people. And they would go, we need to do it ourselves. Maybe we need to send it to a contractor. Oh, we're going to have to get verification. We've got to send it to somebody else. We've got to get approvals, whatever. It's like 3 weeks later. You're like,
government bureaucracy. That's
idiots.
That's like, the sound of government bureaucracy.
That's right. And I look forward to hearing it out of the EU as well. I can't wait to find out what the fucking like CVE equivalent of bolting a cap to a fucking bottle is.
Coming back to the secure...
That's a lot of words from Juan, but to me, I think the problem is much more simple. It all actually breaks down to one thing. NCSE, Yara rules, good. CISA, Yara rules, bad.
Yara rules. Good Yara rules. You can put an NCSE Yara rule in a system.
As that.
That's right.
Shout out to the NCSC. Hopefully this becomes some sort of thing that has teeth. And the good thing about that is that it filters out to the rest of us. Because
I will promote the fucking pledge myself if they actually make it into something with teeth. I didn't have a problem with a pledge. I had a problem with a lack of verification, a lack of a path forward, a lack of updates of
self-promotion. I had a problem with the self-promotion and photo shoots. I gotta admit it. Everyone does it. Krebs did it. Jen did it. Then now you see the same set of people running around creating businesses around Secure by Design, knowing that the pledge was bullshit.
You can see why they did it, right? Like it's a part of the mythos. But I don't have a problem with directors making their brands bigger when you need that. You need that in order to be a good executive for an organization that does not self-promote. Moreover, look at NSA, right? Like the best thing that happened to NSA for NSA communications since the Snowden era was Rob Joyce becoming a public figure who came to speak at our conferences, who showed us his Christmas lights and told us about the good that TAO was doing and told us to stop smoking weed and clean up our acts and come do some cool work. And it's like the only time people were like, okay, NSA sounds kind of like a cool place, right? Like, we get it. I'll go be underpaid and not have any fun and not be able to travel, not be able to smoke weed, not have any foreign friends, not date any Chinese women for the sake of playing ball for a little bit in this cool place. And that's because you had a human face with some semblance of responsibility. So, like, self-promotion to some degree,
but it's not unique to Jen, and I don't want to pick on her. It's just the very general thing about these government people who become like, they join the speaker circuit and start. So it's just.
No. It's all about how you do it. I think it's actually. I do not want to stigmatize that on its face. Because for the people who served their country for 25 years, eating ramen and flying in coach and with their kids going to public schools and never, being able to afford a whatever, if you served your country for 30 fucking years, eating shit in a awful bureaucracy and you did good stuff and you walk out you should be able to trade on your name and your reputation to make a living that compensates for everything that you did for your country at a shit wage. I think that's fine. I just think it needs to be built on something substantive. Like Correct. General Alexander walking out of however many fucking years as the dual hat at NSA, having done a lot of like the war on terror aspect of things, like all kinds of like shit. And then starting a company was not a problem in itself. The problem was that the company seems to have not been. Yeah,
for example.
But dude, no. The
company was a disaster.
The company went
belly up. Yeah, the whole.
But again, dude, these people. Moreover, if they're great and they understand things from the inside, you want them to come into the private sector. You want them to go advise boards. You want them to give some of their perspective. I trust that, on the board of OpenAI, there's at least one person who is going to say, how is that going to affect the security of this country?
These guys have all become marketing heads for startups. Like even Rob Joyce. Rob Joyce is basically on Twitter promoting some Sandfly security stuff. And no.
Let the man make a fucking living. He deserves that much. He has been a good partner to the security community.
Disclose the stuff too. Without disclosure, just kind of doing this emotion
stuff.
You
know it because he is. Like, I don't have a problem with Rob on that front. And frankly, I don't have I have more of a problem with Nicole Perlroth. I have a bigger problem with Nicole Perlroth than I do with Jen. I think Jen, the same as Kemba and everybody else, will go out and monetize. And I hope that they do something more substantive. And maybe we'll find out that her hands were so tied by the god-awful bureaucracy of DHS that she really wanted to make a good difference and she didn't get to. Okay,
fair enough.
That's fine, right? Like, that's fucking fine.
What's your beef with Perlroth? Don't.
Oh yeah, no, you're gonna really? Seriously?
Don't.
Seriously,
don't.
I almost had a fucking aneurysm when that bullshit book dropped, and then to have to see it be used, like touted as like the standard for like Nancy Drew does cyber, like a bunch of on the back of like bullshit, inaccurate reporting and fighting experts. For
Costin,
10 years.
I tried to stop him. You know, right? You saw, you heard.
Look,
I tried to stop him.
I'm in the middle. I don't even know what's going on.
Patch Tuesday was
You're wearing like this top with the U.S. flag. You're wearing that black shirt with the woo thingy.
I've got my woo tattoo. If you, I can pull my. It's fine.
I have like this replica of a Dali painting. So that makes us even.
It's beautiful.
This week we experienced Patch Tuesday. All the vendors shipped their big patches, and Microsoft came out of the gun with 5 new O-Days. The fact that this is just like a throwaway, third-rate, secondary story to us, does that in itself tell you something? That like this is just par for the course, this CLFS thing that is just continuing to bombard us. We have 5 no IOCs, no blog posts from Mistake. We just know that there's 5 new vulnerabilities added to the Kev list. Microsoft patched them and we move on.
I'm realizing that we because you mentioned Microsoft and O-Days, like we're not going to talk about marble dust. We're not going to talk about the Turks being back.
If we could get through these things without these Nicole Perlroth side stories. More seriously, like we have another batch of Microsoft O-Days. They've become kind of like a monthly thing. And much like cryptocurrency, people losing 5 billion and nobody cares, it feels again like nobody really cares. This is just kind of par for the course. Microsoft signed the pledge and updated their progress report against the pledge to say they're doing amazing, by the way. In addition to announcing,
it turns out their self-reporting is an A+.
Correct. They self-report A+, and at the same time announce they're cutting 6,000 jobs, 3% of the workforce.
Including the director of AI or something like that.
In an AI-powered push for efficiency. What do we have to say about what's going on over at Microsoft? We still have our friends there doing great work, obviously, but at a higher level.
They're hiring like crazy. They're picking up a bunch of researchers. Like Mystic just keeps growing and growing. It's just quiet because they don't let them talk.
Yeah. We just kind of gloss over Microsoft security problems here. CrowdStrike also announced layoffs as part of a push for a 10 billion ARR target. So I don't know what's going on in security world.
Everyone's hoping that somehow AI will replace all their experts. They'll replace their virus lab. They'll replace their
I have so many thoughts
reverse engineers. And by the way, this was one of the themes we discussed at PivotCon, and a lot of people also mentioned this, that in their companies, there's this initiative to become an AI company. You're no longer like a security company, you're an AI company. And like all the hardworking guys who are adding signatures by hand, writing error rules by hand. Not it's a bad thing or a good thing, but all that will be replaced with LLMs, with AIs. Reporting will be written by LLMs and so on. And they think that this is just the plan. It's what the investors hope that it can be achieved. And to me, it's part of the cycle. This is what I think. There's a constant cycle in which people do good things that lead to easy lives, and then they start doing bad
their
things,
fucking earnings
which
call?
go to hard lives, and then they need to do hard things again, and so on and so on. And we are moving into the next level of this cycle, and I think that's good for us. I tell you guys,
Satya, quit lying to me. What's the fucking earnings call, bro?
40% of their code is now written by AI. I say that's awesome. Like the amount of bugs that AI will introduce in all these products will give us a bread for years to come.
We didn't have
I just saw a visual of Stack Overflow usage. ChatGPT
dying,
launches and went into zero. It literally is dying, right? Like that's the raw reality of where we are.
Fucking sucks too. Look, I don't think it's a coincidence that all these people are announcing random layoffs and investment at the same time. Right?
It makes sense. It makes sense when you put AI into the context of what's really...
No, don't give them that. Do not give them that.
It's real,
They're fucking lying. No. They're fucking lying. Because this is an earnings call move. You're trying to make your cogs lower in time to say we have made record profits. So you're going to cut 6,000 people of dead weight. It's the Doge move. We're just going to come and slash by the fucking numbers. And it goes to show that they know the levels of inefficiency that are happening in these big companies, right? Where you can just cut 6,000 people overnight and like no one's going to blip. At the same time, what I resent about this being made on the back of like AI is, frankly, anybody who's working AI transformation for an existing company right now should be sweating fucking bullets. The reason that everyone, as Kostin said, has to become an AI company is that there is this financial soft underbelly to big companies right now, which is to say, the reason they're getting grilled about how much AI are you doing? What are you doing with AI? How are you integrating AI into your processes and blah, 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 is the fear that a startup is going to come along powered by AI that is going to eat their fucking lunch in 6 months. And it's not going to have any of the costs. It's not going to have any of the issues. And it's going to destroy the incumbents. I think that's not an unsubstantiated fear, but I think it's also a misunderstanding of go-to-market strategies and what happens in enterprise sector solutions, which are not subject to, a nice little app came around and like, now we're going to use that. However, it is substantiated in the fact that like now there's this asymmetrical capability with AI. So the problem with AI digital transformation, and I can tell you first fucking hand, is that it has inverted what the value proposition is for a company. Your code base, your existing code base is not a moat, it's a liability. Having an existing code base that is 4 million lines long and broken up and not coded to standard and not built in a cohesive, consistent way and not tested, harnessed, modularized in a way that can be maintained means that you're going to have a much harder time getting AI integrated into your systems than a startup that starts from zero. They're going to be able to ramp up faster than you're going to be able to refactor all of your legacy bullshit. So like a camel will walk through the eye of a needle before a Fortune 1000 company becomes an AI company. That's just fucking it. So these motherfuckers are lying in an Ivanti style move, and using it to cut jobs because they want to look more profitable at a strategic time, which I find upsetting because it just creates more resentment from workers against AI at a time when what you want are for workers to become as AI savvy as possible in order to marble that AI into the whole of the company, rather than make it seem competitive with human workers.
That's different from saying your ARR target is 10 billion. You're not going to become an AI company.
I'm not going to speak about their.
Don't say anything. Let me move on quickly. Apple also had itself a patch Tuesday, including a big patches for macOS, iPadOS, and the big iOS 18.5 was shipped. Good thing we didn't see the line may have been exploited in the wild. So
or could have been exploited.
Or could have or may have been exploited.
Might have been massively. Might have been massively.
Might have.
But there was a fascinating bug in there that says muting your mic during a FaceTime call may not result in the audio being muted. Which is
many a marriage, many a relationship right now is quivering here.
Fascinating bug. And I used that to segue to Google announcing advanced protection, which is kind of like their lockdown version. We've been asking for this. We've been asking for this. We've been asking
Google
for this.
Phones away.
Now, the important there's a bunch of features they've added into this advanced protection portal that you can turn on and off things. But a big one is intrusion logging, which is Juanito and Costin have been begging and screaming for.
This is fucking cool.
A new intrusion logging feature creates a tamper-proof audit trail for high-risk users by funneling detailed device logs into an end-to-end encrypted cloud vault that only the account owner can unlock. This is your inspectability on Android, Costin. Are you excited? How are you excited about turning this thing on?
Like several episodes ago, you asked me what's one feature that Apple should implement when I said that they're still not okay.
Apple is not okay yet.
And I said one feature, just to have a remote syslog to send syslog data somewhere. And this is, it shows that someone is listening to the podcast. That's
it shows 74. That it can be done. It can be done.
Not only can be done, but people care. I don't know. I'm kidding, of course, but I think that this is the thing that everybody's been calling for, and this is the thing that Apple needs to implement as well.
And Apple says, Juanito, Apple says, if I turn this on and I give you an intrusion logging feature, I expose the platform.
Yeah, and that's fucking bullshit, as Google has just gone to show.
Well,
how can Google do it and Apple can't?
Yeah.
Well, I ask you a question. How can Google announce? How can Google promise a tamper-proof repository? Because I feel like they get away with wording that says we create a security thing that's end-to-end encrypted and you can do your intrusion logging there. When Apple says, if I do this, I'm exposing too much to criminals.
This is the equivalent of the out-of-band tap, but for endpoint management. And it's why, look, that takes us right back, right? Rob Joyce, Enigma Conference 2003. No, 2017.
APT knows your network better than you do. We know everything better than you do.
And what is the thing that TAO finds the most terrifying? The
an out-of-band network tag that someone is capable of monitoring.
Right. And this is not an out-of-band. This is not an out-of-band network tap. This is an out-of-band endpoint telemetry tap.
The next best thing.
Yeah, it is one of the core strengths of EDR, NDR, XDR, whatever the flying fuck you want to call it, in relation to old school antivirus, anti-malware, which is, you're basically exfiltrate. And sorry, I'm getting a phone call on some device somewhere. Where you're basically exfiltrating.
Let me pick up my phone.
Dude, I don't. It's my iPad or something. I don't know. I'm on Do Not Disturb, but whatever. You're basically saying it's not that we're generating logs. It's that we're generating and exfiltrating logs to somewhere else. And dude, the Apple argument has been bullshit and will continue to be bullshit because nobody's asking you to exfiltrate my text messages. Nobody's asking you to take my private data and put it anywhere. We're asking you to do system logging. What process created the thing with the hash from the file of the thing that's located here, that's sent to wherever, that connected to the thing? That is not a privacy violation. Fuck you. That is a fucking disingenuous, bad faith argument. We're talking about system integrity. We're talking about system components. We're talking about this thing allocated memory in this place in this way that then spawned the process that was untethered from whatever that has this hash and it connected to this network, this domain. It had a DNS resolution of whatever. That is not a privacy violation. That is system verification. And Apple has been fucking lying through their fucking teeth because they don't want anybody to check what's happening in their devices. They want to pretend nothing's wrong.
And while it is, by the way, there's a syslog, remote syslog feature in Apple, but it only works through the cable or in the local network. And in the syslog, they obfuscate all the IP addresses with an unknown algorithm, again, for some privacy reasons. Like, why? That's not the issue. That's not the issue. Exactly.
IP addresses?
The IP addresses are obfuscated with an unknown algorithm. And like that would be just amazingly useful, even if it was done that way, through the cable or in the local network, to have simply this history of IP addresses that different processes in your phone was connecting to.
It's unconscionable. It's unconscionable to obfuscate any material. Like, the only reason to do that is to keep people from seeing evidence of like exploitation or infections. So you are literally going out of your fucking way to, oh my God, we have a proper guest this time around.
My puppy is joining me on the show.
You're literally going out of your way to keep people from being able to check their own devices. And it's fucked up. It's honestly fucked up, because like the only people who would benefit from that are folks that are infected with some of the highest end malware on earth, and they clearly have gotten their hands on some kind of talent that's helping them verify, and you're keeping them from being able to do it. It's fucked, man.
Funneling business to Citizen Lab instead. Yeah. Do you think this pushes Apple to make a change? Do you think we can expect some variant of this at some point down the road? It becomes inevitable.
If enough people complain, yes.
If we ask.
Like if we keep bringing it up, at some point, yeah, sure, we'll get banned. Like our iCloud accounts will be terminated or banned or whatever. But in the end, maybe if enough people complain, then we'll get the syslog without obfuscated IPs in the cloud.
Kostin, I know you never got into the verification program, but Apple just built a multi-bajillion-dollar trusted computing cloud system in order to obfuscate the source of AI requests that nobody fucking asked them for. You already have that infrastructure lying around. What's it going to take for you to give us like an MDM end-to-end encrypted syslog in that infrastructure that's sitting around unused because nobody wants to use your garbage Apple intelligence bullshit? So how about you use it for this? How about that? No one's going to use Siri. Nobody's going to use Siri. Nobody's going to use Siri. It's only getting dumber and dumber and dumber as we go along. So how about you put that infrastructure to good use?
Is Apple Intelligence finally going to ship at some point?
Well, it has been shipping in drips and drabs, and all of it has been so bad.
Trash.
It's only making their products worse. AirPods have gotten worse, right? I don't know why you need to tell me that a notification is too long to be read because it's it's like more than 140 characters. You're fucking idiots. You're ruining a good product. And the same way that like you keep turning on these like Apple Intelligence suggested responses in the text, and they're fucking terrible. You're just making it worse. They fired the dude that was running Apple Intelligence, and they brought in the Apple Vision Pro guy to fix it. Yeah. If the Apple Vision Pro is a sign of where this is fucking going, just throw the towel in, man. Just buy OpenAI outright. Like, I don't know, do something.
Oh, yeah. Staying in the mobile place, I just want to get this off my list quickly. CISA added this telemessage archiving product vulnerability to their known exploited vulnerabilities list. So it's not just a 404 story. It's actually CISA acknowledging that this telemessage app that was being used by the previous NSC director, what's his name? Remind me his name? Mike Waltz. Mike Waltz accidentally revealed that he was using this chat app. Is there anything else to add to this story? I mean, we've spoken about it in the past. We've gotten confirmation now that the thing was indeed popped. Is there a world in which someone is sitting on every single chat that Mike Waltz had?
I forget that part. I want to know, like, CISA doesn't work like some giant fucking clockwork machine. What salty fucking civil servant managed to get this shit through the, like, I mean, it is a last act of fucking IDGAF civil disobedience to walk in there and be like, you know what's fucked? Your ass.
Let's put telemessage on the cav list. Yeah.
This is what happens if you don't sign the pledge. If telemessage would have signed the pledge.
I don't know, man. There's an Israeli company. I don't think there's an Israeli pledge.
There's
a IPO or acquisition. Yeah.
There's a story there's a story on 404 Media that a hacker breached and stolen customer data from telemessage, and the data included data from Coinbase, another financial institution, included in the hack material, screenshots, messages, backend systems, and so on. So,
guys, you're looking at this the wrong way. This is an indictment on Signal, and for not selling a loggable version of Signal. That's it. Everybody loves Signal. People have to follow disclosure requirements. It's just the way.
Something else to get it done.
It's what Wicker did. Wicker became less of a charity and more of like a fucking enterprise business because they offered end-to-end encrypted but logged communications for enterprises.
We're approaching the 2-hour mark, and I gotta get a couple of small things. One
Strong
is
episode, man. Strong episode.
Rogue communication devices have been found in Chinese solar power inverters. This is a Reuters story about U.S. energy officials flagging Chinese-made devices in renewable energy infrastructure, unexplained communication equipment found inside some of these things. Very rice-grainy.
Yeah.
Very rice-grainy.
I was just about to say that. Strong rice-grain vibes in this story, right?
Strong rice grain vibes, but at the same time, I mean, this is a legitimate place to be doing implantation if you're a nation state playing a long game. Do we believe this? Is this funding, posturing? What do we make of U.S. energy officials planting this story specifically with journalists?
Kosin, do you want to be the informed observer here?
Several things which kind of stood out for me from this story was typically these stories, what are they based on? 3 sources. Like in this story, it was like
2 people familiar with the matter.
According to 2 people, so it kind of doesn't reach the trust level that of the stories that we see.
Not even 3
from other places. I don't know, like Kim Zetter or other quality reporting stuff, Chris Bink, and so on. So that was one of the things that stood out for me. The other one is that they do mention this power failure in Europe, in Spain and Portugal, which we already know it wasn't cyber, but they somehow piggyback on the fact that could have been cyber if there was something like this involved. So again, like a hype alert for me. They drop Huawei. Like, how many times can you kick a dead horse? Because Huawei is the world's largest supply of inverters. But like, bottom line for me, I have a lot of friends who are like adding all these solar panels to their houses, batteries, and everyone is buying Chinese equipment for one reason or another. The main reason being that it's the cheapest on the market, and not only that, it's pretty damn good. Like, it's really, really good. And for instance, there's people who buy a Chinese electric car as well, and magically the inverters, the panels, they connect with the car and they store the energy in the car. And during the night, you can take the energy out of the car to power your house. So everything works like very smooth, very nice. You can manage it over the internet, and here we go. everything like is being reported in the cloud. And like a taxi driver showed me in Romania that like right now, my solar panels are generating this much electricity. This is like the electricity my house is consuming, and this is like how much I'm saving. So all of that was on his phone from his cloud user interface. So again, it's convenience, and the moment that you go into this direction, you have to immediately assume that all that data will go into this Alibaba cloud or Huawei cloud or whatever. Like, it's not going to be anywhere else. If you want to check how much electricity your solar panels are producing while you're driving around the city, then it will, I'm afraid that it will be like that. So that's a reality. Now, is this like suitable for critical infrastructure or government projects or whatever? I don't know. I'm not the right person to say. But I can tell you that for home users, especially home users in Europe, this is like everywhere. These inverters,
all
Huawei,
Chinese imported.
They're omnipresent, and people love them because they're like they work decently well. They save them money. They're good. And they're very easy to install, and the state in Romania at least is actually subsidizing this, and they're paying for some of the costs. So if you have a house,
this is a perfect place. Perfect place to put some C2 callbacks, the ability to turn off people batteries. I mean, if you take the typhoon reporting, if you take the typhoon reporting at face value like this, there's a legitimate case.
I'll say one last thing before I let Juan provide the US-centric point of view. But I'll say only this, guys. Like,
I put it away, man.
The malicious intent when it comes to all these home users, I don't think it brings any kind of benefit in the global scheme of things. Except maybe, I don't know, debugging purposes to improve their future generation of technologies, how to make better batteries, optimize charging, and so on. So at least for home users, I don't see
big risk here.
Like, no, the intent, the malicious intent. Right. But again, it's like something we've seen with a lot of others, which is the unintentional stupidity, like the using of CentOS version 7 together with binaries compiled in 2016 and Linux kernel 4 on Ivanti devices. And like, you don't do it on purpose, right? Or on this, like old software, like binaries from 10 years ago. Why? Because that's not the selling point. The quality of the software running on these things is not the selling point. Encryption? What encryption? Like, that's again,
this is what we found out with the medical device thing recently, right?
More of these panels because they have encrypted communication. So that's like the last of their worries. So I somehow incline more in the line of unintentional stupidity rather than malicious intent when it comes to consumer devices.
So this is actually, I do want to treat this with a bit of nuance, because I think this is a story that we could have a predictable response to, and somehow gloss over the true substance of what could be, should be, might be going on here, which is to say, we're not finding out the devices are backdoored. We're finding out, in theory, like, right, there's a huge asterisk on what this reporting is based on. No, that the devices have an alternate communication mechanism, which is important, right? Because what we're being told is energy providers don't trust these devices as it is, so they keep them natted and firewalled and managed in some way that means that even though they are communicating, that they're communicating in some other fashion, right? And that's the best you can hope for usually with any critical infrastructure stuff, right? Like, it's half of it is Windows XP, the other half you're just kind of hoping it doesn't, it doesn't somehow just kind of crash out on its own, and you're going to have it running for 20 fucking years. So you kind of build protections around it. You build a moat, you try to keep it from being accessible, etc. So really what you're talking about here is like an alternate communication mechanism. And that's where I would call the reporting into question, not because that's not plausible, but because depending on the specifics here, there could be benign explanations in the sense of, is it generic hardware, right? Did they bring an IoT chip that also has its own Wi-Fi, whatever, and it doesn't really do anything, but it's left enabled because people were being dumb and they were using generic components? Or are we talking about, like, is it an intentional mechanism that's waiting for a specific kind of auth that's going to enable this, that, and the other in order for somebody to communicate with it in a way that it wasn't supposed to? Like, this is where I resent the rush to push a story with none of the technical verification that you should expect from something this substantive. Because the claim here is, you said typhoons, Ryan, but the claim here is volt typhoony, not salt typhoony. Right. And that's an important distinction.
I brought up typhoon in the context of prepositioning for future conflict compensation. Right.
That's my point. Salt typhoon was a hardcore, punched in the mouth espionage operation that turned our own telecommunication systems into a passive global surveillance mechanism for the Chinese. Well fucking played, my Chinese friends. Volt typhoon is war prepositioning, and those two things are different. If this story is what the innuendo suggests, then this is our version of the Hezbollah beepers. You're fucking telling me that you have a covert communication channel in the hardware for a portion of our power generation? That is not a joke. That's not a backdoor. That's not a haha, we're just paying attention to how much energy you use, bro. Like, this is hardcore. However, there's no ambiguity as to the means that it would take to verify this story. Why haven't you called Joe Fitzpatrick? Why haven't you hit up Travis Goodspeed or whomever else is out there ready to decap some fucking chips, pull this shit? Bunny Huang, where are the people tearing this shit apart going, this is what the components are, these parts are custom, these parts are not, this is what it's going to take to figure out what the firmware in it is, blah, blah, blah? Or is somebody going to uncap this thing and be like, no, you fucking idiots, they used a standard IoT device, it's projected, it's actually advertising a standard SSID for a Wi-Fi card on a thing, it's not even plugged into the control mechanism, move along. Right? Like, are you just buying shitty Chinesium and you didn't realize what it was coming with? Or are you fucking telling us that this is a sabotage contraption in our power generation? Because if that's the fucking case, we need to be having a very different conversation today.
At the same time, we have a letter headed by Senator Cotton, including about 14 or 15 members of Congress, 10 senators, basically calling for TP-Link SOHO networking equipment to be banned from sale in the United States. We talked about beating a dead horse at Huawei. The TP-Link momentum seems to be building. It's a slow drip of, hey, we need to stop this. Hey, these people are underpricing things and getting foothold throughout the United States. Hey, this thing is dangerous. Hey, this thing is dangerous. Do we expect, are we heading into an end game here where TP-Link gets banned like Huawei got banned, the Kaspersky treatment? What do you think happens here with those guys? Or is this a lot of just, Chinesium fear factoring? Nobody wants to comment on TP-Link.
I've been spewing vile hatred for 2 hours. I was Kosten, tell me you have something better than
still one last comment about this story with the from Reuters. Who was it from, by the way? Sarah McFarlane. Let's remember this name.
No one I've heard of before. I don't.
Sarah
hopefully,
McFarlane.
Oh, the journalist?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it says, over the past 9 months, undocumented communication devices, including cellular radios, have been found in some batteries from multiple Chinese suppliers. One of the sources said, so not even two, but one. I think all these stories, why, by the way, there's a funny here. That this is, again, presidential elections weekend in Romania. So like there's
every weekend is presidential elections weekend in Romania.
It's like a lot of funny like memes and whatever. And like one of the funniest of the memes that I saw was, you guys, all this shit is happening because we are washing clothes on Sunday. Like washing clothes on Sunday is a totally no-no, like with the religious folks. Like on Sunday you don't wash clothes. So like the reason like all this shit is happening because
sounds about right.
So like about this story, that's gonna be my comment. All this shit's happening because we're washing on Sundays. Like and there's no hashes like this.
No hashes.
Because if there were hashes or IP addresses, then we could confirm like we see like 1 billion of these devices beaming to those IP addresses. Or, sure, we have samples. We can reverse the samples and say what they do. But like these stories, like Sunday clothes washing stories from rice grain hyping magazines,
just
without hashes, without IPs and whatever. This is what happens when we wash on Sundays.
His Escalade. The guy had his Escalade going to church. And
he married like a Vegas hooker and joined like a Reformed Christian church. And,
who?
The CEO of TP-Link, who's been like trying to pretend he's like Johnny America. Like he bought an Escalade and like, no, I have nothing to do with. Yeah, you're like, okay, bro. Look, we told you that wasn't gonna work. At the same time, I think this is a really fucking stupid initiative. And I've been saying so from the very beginning. I don't support TP-Link. I don't like garbage hardware, software. No.
I used one and it burned, by the way. Like several years ago, I had one. It was like 10 years before, like hardware and software, and eventually it burned.
No, look, it's fine. Even if it were the greatest Chinesium of all time, it's just like, it is just dumping. It has been dumping for a while, but like, I don't care. It's not that I support TP-Link. It's not that I think that TP-Link is good. It's that I think these measures, it takes us right back to the ID conversation. You only get one bullet every 5 or 10 years. And we had this conversation when they first started talking about this TP-Link madness, which is, I don't support TP-Link. However, you don't just yell fire in a theater. You direct people to the exits. You otherwise they all fucking trample each other and die. You don't tell people TP-Link is the devil. Get off of TP-Link without telling them what they're supposed to be moving towards.
D-Link.
So like, what's the point? Yeah, exactly. It's like,
change a letter.
Yeah, what the fuck? Like, this would be the perfect opportunity for Huawei to like come up with the whatever like 1+ router and like and push this kind of bullshit. But like, I'm frustrated because it's once again this notion of like just smashing one bad thing that you see in front of you and not coming up with a replacement, not understanding the ecosystem, not giving people an alternative.
And that's the point I'm trying to get to. It's heading there. It's heading there.
Okay. But Ryan, nobody's buying things from TP-Link stores because they love the TP-Link brand.
No, it's because it's $15 for it.
It's $15 and it's either being crammed down your throat by one of these fucking shitty telcos or you're buying it off of Amazon. And tomorrow, what's TP-Link going to do? TP-Link is going to rebrand as RedLink. And then what? You're going to go through another banning process? Or you're going to tell Amazon they can't sell RedLink routers? Like, this is why I loved what Bo pointed us to, was to like, let's go back to this notion of what the UK has said, which is you want to sell something here? It's not about how good your brand is. It needs to conform to this standard. It cannot have these universal passwords. It needs to be able to be inspected in this and that way. It needs to be able to blah, blah, blah. So you go, okay, these are the safety parameters in a consumer protectionist mindset that allows anybody to sell their product. I don't give a fuck if you're Cisco,
if
you were Johnny America. Right? No, the pledge never said anything. It never fucking said anything about anything. It just required some photo shoots, okay? You needed to wear your Sunday best.
The pledge had a 9 points multi-factor authentication moving towards this, towards...
No, No, but it didn't say a goddamn thing about what these devices were supposed to do. It didn't say a goddamn thing about what your software actual development standards were supposed to be. It just said use Rust and like be nice and be kind to your neighbors. You
have
know,
a bug
like
bounty program.
Have a bug bounty program. Not that a bug bounty program is anything other than a fucking like researcher muzzling mechanism with an NDA. Like what? It's all bullshit. But the point is, it's not. I keep pointing to the UK because it's to say it's not like there isn't something you can do. You can do something. You can say, in order to sell in this market for this subset of products, the minimum standard is this. And if you don't meet that standard, you are not certified to sell in the US market. The FCC has been doing shit like that for like radios and ham radios and Wi-Fi devices. Like, try to sell a fucking device that has any kind of wireless or RF connectivity in the US. It's like, dude, I'd rather smuggle drugs through the southern border right in a cavity right now than I would try to like build a Wi-Fi device that doesn't have some kind of pre-approved FCC certification. Like, they act like they're gonna fucking firebomb your house if you get on the wrong bands.
So that's a better use of time and money than banning TP-Link, which is
because frankly
demanding a certain level of excellence from everyone.
You have to basically say this is the minimum bar for operating in our market, because you also want American developers to meet that standard. You're telling me that if tomorrow Johnny America TP-Link CEO starts a brand new company in the US and he's paying undocumented immigrants to build routers in a fucking factory in San Diego, and he's selling us garbage routers, but they were built in America, what's your xenophobic argument then? It has nothing to do with. What if Cisco decides to make the absolute most garbage entry consumer level router, and it has a default password of password 123? What are you going to say to them? They're Cisco. They're a fucking Johnny America company. It's like, that's not the fucking point. That is not the point. Frankly, like, you start with the lowest standards. Like, you're talking about like shitty hard-coded passwords and whatnot. What I want to see is like inspectability standards. And that's what because it's what we've said before. When you introduce inspectability standards that are meant to be consumer protectionist, what you're saying is, I don't give a fuck who you are. You can be TP-Link or you can be Apple. You need to conform to a standard that allows the customers that are buying your product to know what's happening inside of that product. Why do we, like, I like Apple and Google, but why do we trust them that they're not doing something incredibly fucked up to spy on their, on their competitors, right? Why? Like, we trust the brand, but that's not because we're informed. It's just because we trust the brand.
We're at 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I will demand some shout-outs.
3-hour episodes.
Costin, close the show with some shout-outs from your end. Anybody you want to say hello to?
I met a lot of fans of the show at PivotCon. I mean, roughly everyone I met said that they are listening to the show. They like the show. There's only one thing that everybody's complained about. Well, actually, two things. The length of the show. People
too short, too long.
People demanded the half an hour version, AI polished shortened version of the show of 30 minutes. That and less cursing. This is what everybody said.
Yeah. I got the cursing feedback, but I push back on that. That's just a normal part of American life.
We're gonna push back, and no fact check.
Look, motherfuckers, if you don't like this shit, how about you sponsor the show? We're doing this shit for free.
We're talking to our listeners like that.
I think our listeners,
pay to
the true listeners,
cursing.
The 72 that have stuck around, they appreciate what we do. They're the real ones.
Absolutely.
And frankly, I got a lot of complaining about why we haven't hit the 3-hour episode. So I don't know what you guys are talking about with the 30-minute shit. There's people who want to clean their pools and they want to mow their lawn, and they need 3 hours of condensed, ignorant ranting being lightly massaged by better voices for 3 hours.
From my side, I was invited by Nick Vigier, who is the CISO for a company called Oscar Health, a big health insurance company here in Phoenix. I was invited by him to come and talk to his security team about security issues, trends, and so on. It turned into an it turned into a Q&A conversation. It sounded very much like the podcast, and I was very excited. I was very excited that all the folks were listening to the podcast as well. And these are just random people that I've never met before. So the show does resonate with some security people. Juanito, close out with your shout outs.
I have been just talking shit all day.
What's the latest on LabsCon? Give me a LabsCon update quickly.
Yeah, let's start with that. LabsCon we're right at this interesting intersection where things are starting to open up. So the CFP is open. Now's the time. We seldom extend it or anything like that. We tend to, thankfully, knock on wood, have quite a bit of good research. So please get your stuff in. We want to see your most amazing talks. There are very few good venues to release cool shit in front of the right people. I'd like to think this is one of them. Like, give us, bring some interesting stuff. I don't care if it's OSINT. I don't care if it's whatever. Bring us cool shit and we will listen. In the same vein, right now, ticket sales are available for alumni only, and that's only going to last for about 10 more days. After that, we're going to open to the broader invitee list and folks that are requesting an invite. If you'd like to be a part of it and you haven't been before, please request an invite.
All the links are up on labscon.io. Labscon.io. The call for papers closes on June 23rd, so you don't have much time. We're less than a month away from closing the call for papers.
I mean, it's going to be competitive. Bring some good shit. Invitees, it's limited. We're keeping the same size. There's no vendor hall. There's no whatever. It's the same size. So, come in. After we hit that number, we can't do anything. We're done. So please join. And the other thing I'll say, because Courtney would kill me otherwise, is this is the stage where we're open to sponsors. And it's a really interesting process for us because we give very little to sponsors as far as actual marketing material. We don't give them the leads. We don't get them emails from the folks that attend. Instead, it's about supporting a community initiative that has an extremely strong following and that knows who its friends are, knows who's actually looking to support the community, and giving them interesting opportunities to connect with a crowd of experts, but not by selling their souls or hours in the process. So we've had some amazing support through the years. I know some folks are going through a bit of some economic hardships. So we respect that part, but we've had a lot of folks that just kind of keep supporting year after year, like Binarly and Vertex Project and Acer and now Silent Push and a lot of return folks that we hope to still see there. So that's my pitch on the LabsCon end, because you forced my hand and frankly, because we should. Real shout outs, though, if you don't mind me monopolizing here for a little bit. We mentioned Chich. I mean, honestly, Chich and NCSC, it is.
Come on the show. Come on the show and hang out with us.
I hope Chich will come on the show. Frankly, NCSC has been the gold standard for any government to aspire to. Thank you to GCHQ for thinking that was a worthwhile effort, and for doing so much to essentially give us a standard bearer that we can point to and say, if only you did what the UK has done, we would be in a better place. And that was an argument we were making to the US government for 3-4 years now, of saying, we don't need CSD inside of NSA, or we don't want CISA. We need the technically expert side of the house to have a way to contribute with a common faith, good faith, common well-being mission. And NCSC has been that standard bearer. And I'm infinitely grateful, because before NCSC, we just thought it was not possible. The best you can hope for is a decent cert. So shout out to Chich, who's been, kind of holding that flag and holding the place down. Hopefully we'll see him at this Binding Hook event, which our friends at Binding Hook Virtual Routes, Max Smeets is putting something together in September in the UK. If you folks get to be around, it's looking like a really interesting venue. So I'm looking forward to speaking there. Shout out to PivotCon, man, Pasquale, Bartek, and everyone that puts that together. It's our LabsCon sister conference in Europe, and it does us proud, man. They've got a really nice thing going, the right vibe, the right invite list, some pretty great talks. And in that, Ashley Chen did an amazing talk on this IAB thing that we didn't even get to talk about, which is sort of going against the diamond model, which I'm happy for anybody that kind of sort of does away with that antiquated thing. Similarly, Silas Cutler closed us with an amazing talk about, Operation Hijacking by some of the Russians and some really interesting real world consequences of cyber and lack thereof. Shout out to Silas, who's the GOAT at all times. And a bunch of other folks. I mean, there was a JP Morgan talk that I can't talk about, but was really phenomenal. There was just such great energy there. So I'm really happy to see it. I want to see more of these small conferences pop up. And I love that they are sprouting up, and they're all sprouting up from this kind of common community, right? Like, not only do we have PivotCon coming out of like the LabsCon community, but now we see Offensive AI Con from our friends at Dreadnought is popping up in San Diego later this year. And that, so it's like these sister conferences that have like taken the model. They're all capping at 150, 175 attendance. They're all invite only. They're choosing really technical talks. It's like for folks that love an area to get to work together. And frankly, that is the best possible thing we can do. I mean, our conferences have turned into these bullshit CES style expos, and we need our closed venues of experts. So thank you to everybody that's putting that together.
And if possible, a recovery day where they do the IV with the good stuff.
The good stuff.
We'll end it right there. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week.
Bye-bye.
Peace.